Inspired in part by some feedback that I got from one of you who maybe called me out for not showing any emotion, although you gotta admit it's hard to show emotion via an assignment. This video is brought to you today to help you think about history through a new lens. So I had this idea a while ago and I've been thinking about it and ruminating up in my brain about what this could look like and how this could help you process history and review for now and for the future, and also just to kind of analyze how the world works, okay? And so this process is called the have, want, do, and then process. So I'm going to keep saying that: have, want, do, and then process, okay? So that is what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. Get pumped. There is a basic structure to this process that focuses around the idea of there being 4 questions that you can ask yourself about any situation in history ever in order to better understand it. This is a way to review material, process, and think about why things happen, have happened, and will happen, and you know, all that kind of happening, which is what history is all about, right? Okay. So the basic structure is 4 questions, and that's why it's called the have, want, do, and then, because those are the 4 questions that I want you to ask yourself about any situation in history whenever you're analyzing it, okay? So the first is, what do they have? Like what, and this could be resources, ideals, situations, what do they have? And the they could be anyone. I'll talk more about that in a minute. The second question is, what do they want? What do they have, and what do they want, okay? And then the third question is, what are they going to do, or what did they do to get what they wanted? Okay? What do they have? What do they want? What are they going to do for it? And then the final question of these 4 is, and then what are they going to do after they have whatever it was that they wanted? So you have the where did they start? Where do they want to go? What are they going to do to get where they want to go? And then what are they going to do once they have it? So you may have noticed that one thing that all of these questions have in common is the word they. And so that is the word that you can replace with whatever is fitting to the situation. So what do they have? What do they want? What are they willing to do to get it? And then what are they going to do once they have it, right? So when I use this word they, like I said, you can replace this with anything. But generally speaking, if you're looking back and analyzing world history, you're going to be thinking about those major power players. Because these people with more power are the ones who are able to influence change and who are able to make the rest of the world do what they want, right? And that's just kind of how it is. So let's think about what that could look like. That could be someone like the ruler, so the kings or whatever form of government, whatever form of ruler a government had. It could be the colonizers, it could be the imperial power, it could be, like you could use they as an entire nation, so you could say, what did the United States have? What did Belgium have? What did the United Kingdom have, or Great Britain have? You could also look at big companies. Now under neo-colonialism, you could look at like what did McDonald's have? What did Nike have? Or going back, you could look at like what did the Dutch East India Company have? Those kind of things. Those are all of the theys on one side of the spectrum, right? You could look at the other side of the spectrum. Instead of the people in power, the people at the very end, at the very lowest part of the system, who are maybe pushing back against those powers. That's another group of people that you could use as they, as the big old they, to analyze what they're doing, what they have, what they want, what they're going to do to get it, and what they'll do with it after, in order to understand history too. So this could be anything like, your rebelling group. It could be the oppressed people. It could be, some young intellectual who's preaching a new form of government. You know, it could be any of those people too, because those people who want change, or even just those people who are oppressed, what they're doing matters, of course, as well when you're trying to understand why history has happened the way that it's happened. So then what you have to do after you have your they is pick that point in history and start to fill in the blanks. What happened? What did that person, what did that group, what did that nation, what did that rebelling force of dissatisfied Frenchmen do? And what do they want, right? Okay, so we will start with a good old classic example that I love to use. You probably get sick of it, but it matters, and it's a super perfect case study, an example of what was going on all around the world during that time period. And so that's why I keep coming back to it in class, in tests, over and over and over again, because it serves as a frame of reference, as a reference point for you to understand everything else around it, okay? And so what is that? What is this case study that I love to refer to over and over again? If you haven't guessed it already, yeah, you're right. It's gonna be Belgium, and it's gonna be the Congo. You know it had to come back, of course. Here we are, we're gonna get into it. Okay, so the questions are, what do they have? So the they in this case is Belgium. What do they want? What does Belgium want? What is Belgium willing to do to get it? And then once they got it, what are they gonna do with it? You could get more specific by saying King Leopold, the evil mad king, right? Okay, so let's start with question 1. What did Belgium have? Let's start with question 1. What did Belgium have? Okay, so the year, we're back in the late 1800s, around 1870s, 1880s, trying to think that we are this tiny little country up in the northern part of Europe. And what do we got? This is the late 1800s, so that means there's an industrialized economy. That means there's a lot of other powers up in Europe who we might be competing with. We're close by to Britain, we're close by to France, we're close by to Germany, we're close, still kind of close, not too close, but pretty close to the Ottoman Empire, which is still thriving. So there's a lot of things that are going to cause us to want more. And when I say us, which is always kind of awkward, I am, of course, referring to Belgium. So what Belgium wants, what Belgium has, is an industrialized economy, lots of competition, and that good old King Leopold, who is a raving mad king who wants more and more power and more wealth. Okay, cool. And we're gonna move on to the second question. And what does Belgium want? Hopefully you remember the answer to this. Whenever you're thinking about this what do they want question, this could be something that will give the they power, or it could be a specific resource. That's always a good answer to the what do they want in world history. People are always after those resources. Even today, this is the answer to most questions is what do they want? A resource. Oil. Okay. All right. So what does Belgium want? Do you remember? That's going to be that sweet, totally wonderfully useful rubber, which, if you remember, you can get out of trees, at least at this point we get rubber and we make synthetic rubber nowadays, but then they use the sap out of rubber trees to make the rubber that would then be used in other factories, etc. So what do they have? Industry, competition, mad king. What do they want? Rubber. Now what are they going to do to get it? And this is the answer that you know because I had you study and create a whole speech and spend a lot of time thinking about what Belgium did and how they justified their actions, right? And so you know this answer, and that this answer is, of course, what did Belgium do to get the rubber for themselves? They went in and exploited the Congolese. They enslaved the Congolese. You could get really graphic and detailed with how terrible their treatment of the Congolese were at this time, to export that rubber and to do it in a fraudulent manner, to lie to the rest of the nation, of the nations of the world. You could talk about the scramble for Africa and how they worked with other European nations to divide up the continent, to claim it and say that this little chunk of land belongs to us, this chunk of land belongs to us. You could go into more depth about how King Leopold installed his force publique throughout the Congo, about how he just totally lied to even the Belgian people, in addition to the rest of the world, to whoever was watching, to continue to exploit that. So they had industry, they wanted rubber, and they exploited the heck and killed millions, literally millions of Congolese to get it, right? Okay, and then the fourth and final question is, what are they gonna do once they have this resource, okay? And so the answer here is simple, and that is tires, making a bunch of tires. It's all about that industrial revolution, man, and the use of motor vehicles, as well as, bikes and stuff. Okay, so this is a simple answer, and it ties in really closely to the what do they want question, but it is the fourth and final question. So Belgium and the Congo, this is our little case study. This is our have, want, do, and then example. Belgium had an industrialized economy with a ton of competition from neighboring European nations. They wanted rubber so that they could continue growing, and they went to the Congo through really false guise to exploit the native labor there and to take all of the natural resources. And then once they got what they had, they continued to produce and grow economically. And so that even when Belgium and even when foreign nations got involved and required King Leopold to let go of the Congo, Belgium continued to control it until 1960. And then, as you know, that totally decimated, just destroyed the Congolese capacity to become their own industrialized, functioning nation, because they lacked the infrastructure, because it wasn't even until 1960 when they had equality, or when they had liberty. But even then, the CIA got involved and blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's a really dark story that we could keep talking about for a long time. But we're going to pause right there because I answered those 4 questions for Belgium. Okay, so that's the first layer of this that I want to introduce to you today. That is the process that I want you to ask yourself. These are the questions I want you to ask yourself as you're thinking about history. What do they have? What do they want? What are they going to do? And then what next, right? So, however, there's one more layer that I want you to add that I think will help you continue to make those connections, to show how this single example is just a case study. It's just one example of a pattern that was going on all around the world. So there's a lot of really great, I guess what you could call vocab terms, that I have introduced to you guys, lots of things that you could try to memorize, but there are some terms that are so important because they are so prevalent, so pervasive, they are just everywhere when it comes to looking at world history, right? So I'm going to list some of them right now. There are more, but if you can identify these and then look at these terms and apply them to specific examples, you are so golden. Okay, all right. So I've got colonialism, imperialism, nationalism, globalization, industrialization. We've got trade, religion, belief systems, political ideologies, expansion, revolution, and resources. And then finally, I think I'm going to add social hierarchies. Those are some terms. I'm going to leave them up here on the screen, hopefully covering my face. Maybe if you want to write them down, if you don't know right off the bat what these are. Okay, cool. All right, so these are the things that you need to know. These are the ideas, the patterns. What I've always told you guys are the big picture patterns of the world. That if you can say how these different factors, these different patterns apply to specific examples, you're so good, you can show a totally great understanding of the world, and you can answer any question that College Board is probably going to throw at you. So all of these terms are what I have introduced to you guys this year as big picture patterns. These are the things that happen everywhere throughout all of history and influence everything or help explain why everything is happening. These are the patterns or the factors that motivate individuals and nations and empires to do terrible things and also really, really wonderful things, to innovate and create, and also to kill and destroy and alter lives forever, right? On almost any test, if you're like totally blanking out and you can't remember the cause behind something, if you think back to these factors, to these patterns, you might just jog enough memory in your brain to make that connection. Like, honestly, if you see an answer that says nationalism or imperialism, that's probably the answer, like straight up, okay? Okay, so anyway, to connect these two things, these patterns and this process of looking through history, what I want you to try to do is either before or after you've done a have, want, do, and then, before or after you do that, to think about these patterns. So you could look back on this example of the Congo and try to make connections. All right, resources, rubber. Okay, industrialization, big. That was one of the major reasons why they did that. Colonialism, you had them colonizing essentially in the Congo. Belief systems, well, you had their belief ideology of social Darwinism, of white man's burden, of being superior, racially superior to the Congolese. That was a big factor in it. Expansion, trade, those were all super, super relevant to that situation, right? Okay, so you can do that, and you can also think about those big factors first to help you try to jog your memory for those specific details that you may not be remembering immediately. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do another example, but think through these big picture patterns first, okay? So let me put myself into the mindset, into the zone of imagining myself as this they. Okay, so the year is 1760-ish. It's the 1760s. It's that decade, and I am feeling inspired by a new ideology that is encircling the globe. Well, not everywhere, but mostly Western nations. I'm inspired, and I'm also feeling frustrated because there's this imperial power that is lording over me and demanding unfair things. And you know what? I'm feeling so frustrated and so inspired that I might need to start a new form of government and do that by starting a revolution. Okay, so I just hit on like 4 different patterns right there: an ideology, a form of government, imperialism, and revolution. And those are those patterns that, again, are going to show up everywhere in world history, right? And you probably know what I am leaning towards if you can remember back to what was happening in the 1760s, 70s, and 80s, and that was going to be the North American Revolution, which, you know, some people will just call the American Revolution, but this being world history, we like to recognize the fact that there's 2 Americas, not just one, and we like to be specific when we're saying United States of America or the North American Revolution. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the have, want, do, and then for the North American Revolution. So what did North America have? They had a bunch of people across the sea taxing them unfairly. They had that taxation without representation that they wanted to change. They had monarchy taxing, you know, us wealthy white folks back in the United States, back in North America, the colonies at this point in time, right? And what did they want? They wanted their own form of new government that was different from the monarchies. And they wanted a government that followed these newfangled Enlightenment ideals that were inspiring people in the Western world to demand liberty and freedom for everyone. You know? And so what are we gonna do? Well, I guess we're gonna start a revolution, right? And we're gonna fight a lot. We're gonna pull in our allies like France. We're gonna get really happy that the Brits are kind of poor and they can't sustain this fight for very long because they're in debt from their own wars before this. And then what? We're gonna build ourselves a brand new nation, baby. Good old US of A. Okay, so there you've got your have, want, do, and then, right? Just like that, I've analyzed this entire system and I analyzed this entire event and I've made connections to these big patterns that are going on in the world at this time. Okay, so that is our new process of looking at history, of reviewing history, which again is the, if I haven't said it enough, is the have, want, do, and then process. But I want to answer the question for you that you might be thinking, which is, why is this important? Why is Ms. Foster asking me to look at history this way? Why is she spending all of this time making this video? Don't worry, I have an answer for you, okay? So in addition to probably being able to win some really great arguments with your relatives that just don't know their history, this process is useful because it helps you understand why things happened then and therefore why things are happening now. I find the study of history most useful because it helps me understand what happened then and how that led to where we are today, right? It helps me understand how we got here, why we're here, because I'm able to see what somebody or some group of people did and why they did it. Like, what did they have that would cause them to want to do this stuff that caused this big thing to happen? And now I can see how this big thing, this, for example, my example of the North American Revolution, that happened, that affects us to this very day, right? But if I can say, what did they have? What did they want? What did they do? And then, where are we now? That's going to help me understand this situation a lot better. And so in addition, if I'm able to say what happened then and how does that bridge now, it helps me understand, helps me see how the actions that I'm taking and that my government is taking and that the groups of people and nations that are in power now, how their decisions might ultimately affect the future. And that's why studying history, and maybe this way can help you, is useful. All right, that is all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoy this. I hope it's clear and makes some things nice and clarified for you. Look forward to some assignments related to this idea in Google Classroom coming up. And that is all. Bye, guys.